So I'm Bruce McKern, and it's a great pleasure for me personally to be here today in the premises of Macquarie Graduate School of Management in the city, because I was the first dean of MGSM. And I fought for many years to create the school with the assistance of a wonderful staff of people, and it's really great to see us here in these facilities. So welcome to this session. It's about transformation through innovation. And I'd like to start first of all by, I've chosen incidentally a picture from the agricultural industry from one of our local universities, Sydney University, because I know there has been some discussion of that in the program, robotic farming. I'll just give you a quick insight into the speakers. I'll start the session with a little bit of a discussion on business models. Mark Graf from CocaCola Amatil will be next. He'll speak about the changes he's implementing within the company. He'll be followed by Leonard Rowe, who is the Technical Sales Relationship Manager for AME Research. Leonard has had a lot of experience in the mining industry, and he'll speak about that and the kinds of changes that are being made there through innovation. And finally, we'll have Rod Lopez, who's Head of Manufacturing with one of Australia's great international companies, Kortian. So that's the plan. I'd like to start very briefly with a quick overview of my feelings or my views about business model innovation. And I just want to say, these are my views. They're culled from a number of different sources. It has some limitations, a very simple view, but it'll be helpful, I think, as we start into the discussion of innovation inside existing companies. So I want to talk key elements, disruptive innovation models, and the role of the CEO. We'll come to that later. So to me, the business model is the recipe of the business, as Peter Drucker used to say. And the two important things, I think, is it has to create value for the customer, but it also has to capture some of that value. Those are the two key elements, I think, in understanding whether a business model is working for your company. I think there are four elements, although many people would argue there are many more than four. I've tried to keep it simple. And the first of those is the positioning of the product, and the extent to which you can develop a novel positioning, an innovative positioning, something that satisfies consumers with either something they haven't had before or something that's better value than they've had before. That is, I think, the first part of the business model. The second part is delivering that value to the customers. And I use the idea of the value chain, Michael Porter's value chain, again, as a very simple way of thinking about the key elements. Now, there are more complicated views. There's the business model canvas, for example, which covers a whole host of issues, and that's fine if you want to do a check on your business model to make sure you've covered everything, but for our purposes, I think this is sufficient. And then finally, there's the ecosystem around you, which can make a huge impact on whether your business model is going to be effective or not. And we've seen lots of examples of that in recent years. And all of this is supported by capabilities, and capabilities have to be differentiated. If they're common or garden capabilities, they don't give you a competitive advantage, and so many people argue that they have to be V, R, and IN, which means valuable, rare, and inimitable. I think this is all ideas you're very familiar with. On positioning, the business model has to solve some kind of a problem for the customer. It may be a problem they don't know they have, such as, for example, when the iPhone appeared. But there are many ways in which we can do that for the customer. We may change the customer experience. FAA Schwartz, for example, doesn't sell dolls. You have to go and adopt a doll from a creche in one of their shops. Blue Nile solves the problem of buying engagement rings by letting you design your own engagement ring on the web. Nest adds customer benefits to a very mature product, the heating system in your house. And then there are cross-boundary disruptors such as Uber and Airbnb that move out of one industry by taking some of the technologies or ideas from another industry and create really radically different products. The second element, the value chain, is well understood, and I simply want to make the point here that I'm not talking about the supply chain only, I'm talking about the whole value chain from product conception right through to after-sales service. And some people would argue this is a rather static view of the company and the activities a company does. It's a somewhat pipeline type of view, whereas today we talk much more about platforms. And I recognise that that's perhaps a weakness. But the important thing I think here is that IT is absolutely critical in this. And there are plenty of examples of companies who have been able to use IT really effectively in managing the value chain. Disruptive technologies can create novel value. Now here are just a few quick examples. Hershey now has 3D printed candies, which you can have personalized if you want to. Nestle has been very successful with an ice cream made out of ice cream with an outside coating of gel which looks like a banana skin. The whole thing is edible. Very, very popular in China. It was introduced by their Chinese business and it's now exported all over Asia. So it's an example of a very simple incremental product, but nevertheless very well thought through. We now have bendable labels that you can use on food products or on clothing. And then Sydney University, as I mentioned, has been working in robotic crop production, so that, again, there's a huge saving there in labour. These are just some of the technologies, of course, that can disrupt a whole industry. The ecosystem, I think, is also very important, and it consists of people like apps developers, opinion leaders in social networks, various actors in the industry or in sectors that are adjacent. You know, think about how Apple was able to reform the recorded music industry with its initial products, impact it had on the telecoms industry. Regulators, the regulatory system, of course, these are all important as well. And the ecosystem is something I think we didn't used to think about 20 years ago, but it's certainly critical today to the success of most new businesses. I'm going to stop at that point because we're going to talk more about the CEO and the role of the CEO, and I'm going to switch now to our first speaker. So I'd like to invite Jacques Markgraf to speak about his experience with Coca-Cola Amatil. So Jacques, would you like to take over?
Hi everybody. Coca-Cola Amatil, you might have heard of it. It's an ASX 200 business here in Australia. We're about a $5 billion revenue business operating across 6 or so countries. We're one of the big 5 bottlers globally within the Coke system. Employ about 15,000 roughly employees across the business. We're effectively a manufacturer, a distributor and seller of beverage product primarily. We also have a number of other divisions. We have our alcohol and coffee business. You might be familiar with Grinders as our coffee product. A number of products in the alcohol space as well, Yenda being one of our brands. And then obviously we're quite famous for a number of the bigger non-alcoholic ready-to-drink brands such as Coca-Cola, Fanta, Mount Franklin, etc. I joined the business about 8 or 9 months ago as head of or general manager of strategy, planning and innovation. I also look after the business intelligence